or or interact with enterprises, why there is a need for anti-spoof, and then again what businesses are showing. We've got some data that we'll share with you that is actually a little bit surprising to some. I think it will be. So when you talk about spoof calling trends, the tactics to defraud consumers out of money and personal information becoming much more sophisticated. We're seeing more multimodal attacks. We're seeing omni-channel where there's both voice and SMS associated with it. There may be email as well. Again, there's multiple verticals that are getting hit with these types of scams. I'm sure that if you're in the U.S., you've at some point received a text spam or a text call about an unpaid toll that you may have not paid. Jury duty, contempt of court. We'll go through some examples as well in a few slides. In the financial sector, there's kind of an interesting one. I'm not sure if people are familiar with this one, but Dallas Turner, he's a Minnesota Vikings linebacker. He's in his second year in the NFL, and he was recently fell victim to a scam that cost him $240,000. And he was allegedly targeted by a caller posing as a representative from J.P. Morgan Chase, who claimed that someone was trying to impersonate him at a bank branch in Arizona. And so the scam took place earlier this year. The caller convinced Dallas Turner to protect his funds. He needed to urgently transfer his money to alternate business accounts to be protected. And so, believing that his finances were at risk, he visited two separate Chase Bank branches and transferred $120,000 to each. Funds that were later discovered to have been funneled into fraudulent accounts. He actually didn't realize that he had been duped until after speaking with a family member who raised concerns about the legitimacy of the instructions. He then reached out to law enforcement, which he should, to try to regain the funds. But the police have identified the suspects and are preparing to file charges. But so far, they've only managed to recover less than $2,500 so far, which obviously is a very small amount based on how much he was scammed out. Retail, we'll see examples with Amazon. If you were at one of the previous no sessions or in Prague or in Arizona, we use the Verizon use case as an example where the typical scam is you've bought a couple of iPhones and we need to verify that it's really you. So again, we continue to see those. Again, I talked about spoof calls where they come from bad actors. We've seen banks and financial institutions, as well as other vertical industries as well. Have their number spoofed as well. The FCC reported $3 billion in 2024 due to impersonation scams. I would contend that number is probably a little understated. As I mentioned with Dallas Turner, wasn't even sure that wasn't a legitimate transaction. There's others that are too embarrassed to report anything to the FTC, and there's others that just don't know that they've actually been scammed, like I said, with Dallas Turner, or it could have been in such a small amount that either A, the person didn't realize it, or again, they didn't want to report that to the FTC. So, $3 billion is probably low. Again, we say that with a B. We tend to get very, very numb to when we start talking about numbers in the billions, which is actually kind of disheartening a little bit. But as we look at some recent impersonation scams, here's an example of of a fraud prevention scam, claiming to be from the FCC fraud prevention team. They demanded payments to be made via gift cards to prevent jail time. Below is a transcription of the audio that was captured by one of our honeypots. Again, it sounds fairly reasonable that you could have had a recent transaction, or somebody may have stolen your credit card, and again, you want to make sure that transaction wasn't actually you. The challenge though is yeah, there's no FCC team that actually exists. The interesting thing, and I don't understand why individuals would think that a gift card would be a way to solve a problem, but again, government nor do many other institutions actually ask for gift cards. Fortunately, there were only a couple of thousand calls made, and the scam was short-lived. But still, there were some individuals that were impacted. Here's another example from Walmart. Again, them getting their number spoofed. If you pre-authorized purchase for a PlayStation, in the amount of a little over $900. If you want to cancel your order or connect, please press 1. So they're fairly similar. And then finally, the last one is pre-authorized purchase from Apple or MacBook Pro. Again, in the amount of $1,500. If it's very similar, that you can either talk to a representative who will then get your personal, will try to get you for your personal information, and compromise, any of the compromise, your credentials on a particular account. So again, this is real, and I'm sure each one of you or several of you have gotten one or more of these types of accounts, or these types of scams. I know personally there's a new loan scam that's coming out that says you've been pre-authorized for a certain amount, and they continue to call every single day. For me, I actually still have a home phone, still get a call on that every single day. I get a call on my mobile every single day about that same loan scam. Unfortunately, all these calls are A-level attested, and so while Stir Shaken will help with the tracebacks, and we've given that information to Josh at the ITG. We continue to see those calls in, and it's a pretty sophisticated attack where the bad actor is placing a small number of calls across several 100,000 telephone numbers, and so the numbers continue to rotate. Again, that's why some of the good actors actually get caught up in some spam labeling that may be similar to what a bad actor would look like. So obviously this has a big impact on consumers. 3/4 of U.S. adults know someone that's has received an AI-generated deepfake robocall. If you remember, the first deepfake robocalls that we saw in the U.S. were back, early 2024 with Joe Biden telling people not to go out to vote for the Democratic primary. And that one was shut down as well. Again, all those calls were A-level attested, which helped figure out where the calls originated, and they were shut down with cease and desist orders, and eventually terminated. Again, a number that Sarah talked about at the beginning, almost half, 40%, 43% submitted a robocall complaint, which is up pretty significantly compared to what we saw in 2023. So Again, not everybody always submits a robocall complaint. I know I don't. When I get robocalls, but this is probably just a fraction of the problem. And so what happens across the industry sectors, and again, all these numbers are fairly similar. Healthcare may be a little bit slower or lower, I should say. 2/3 of adults receive at least one healthcare robocall scam during enrollment back in 2024. For 2025 benefits, again, what we see the bad actors are very timely and are very good about being con men, and will rotate what scams that they're going to be based on the time of year. So, during tax season, obviously you see an increase in tax scams. During open enrollment, you're going to see an increase in open enrollment scams. I'm sure everybody has either gotten a text or a voice call about a package delivery, whether it be Amazon, UPS, FedEx, etc. In the financial services sector, again, almost similar numbers that there's an increase in robocall scams from financial providers, and from an anti-spoofing technology, you'll see that those are the enterprises that are first movers to use this technology that we have, and the numbers are rather staggering. From an insurance perspective, again, similar, about 3/4 of people from surveys that we've done recently that think that there's an increase in robocall scams from insurance providers. So again, this has a huge impact. There's a massive distrust with customers, and eventually, brand dilution happens on the enterprise. And again, the enterprise, unlike a DDoS attack or something similar, they actually don't know what's happening, because they don't know that the bad actors could be using their numbers. They don't know if the bad actors are using maybe not their numbers, but pretending to be that particular enterprise. So again, this problem is real, and it's concerning. And again, customers, trust depends on the caller ID, and so you can see that nearly 3/4 never answer a call from a number that they don't recognize, and again, that's up from 2/3 from 2 years ago. So it continues to grow. Almost 3/4 of customers that we surveyed have missed calls from unknown numbers that they would have answered if they knew who was calling them. But again, the number came in with just or the call came in with just the number. There was no branding associated with it, and you can see then that similar numbers, near 2/3, or I'm sorry, 3/4 would prefer to engage with a business if they use branded calling. Let me know, what your name is or a logo, and they would be more protected. They feel more protected if branded calling solutions were used by more organizations. So again, we're seeing a good uplift in branded calling. We're seeing, additionally, we're seeing more anti-spoofing technology. The anti-spoofing technology be incorporated by the different verticals. One other kind of piece of data that we see is that again, percentage of people willing to pick up and answer a phone call if they know who's calling. Healthcare is the highest at 77%, but again, between insurance, retail, financial services, hospitality, and travel, well over 65%. If I knew who was calling, I'd pick up. So again, the combination of branded calling and knowing who exactly is calling me, and it is legitimately from that enterprise, does have a big impact. So hopefully this with the data that I've just shown, that the need for anti-spoofing technology is real. and we're starting to see, like I said, customers and enterprises budget for it, figure out how to implement it, understand, where all their calls are coming from. Because I know that several large enterprises, may have some sophisticated, dialing plans, may have some sophisticated ways that they call, and to make sure that we're not going to block a call that is legitimate. So what we've seen, for the customers that we've implemented across TNS, over 1 million calls have been treated per month, and it continues to grow. 5 million calls were blocked in the first 5 months of this year. Almost 1 million calls received advice of risk. And again, the difference between whether we block a call or whether we provide advice of risk like potential spam or potential fraud is all dependent on what the enterprise policy is around what they want to do if the call isn't verified, coming from that particular enterprise. And so when we look at the data, I pulled the data for the top enterprises that are in production, the top 10. You can see several financial services firms. Again, the numbers range anywhere from, really 30% to 40%, and even up to 50%. Now, some of this data, this is based on the number of calls that we've seen that weren't verified versus the number of branded calls that particular customer delivered. And again, they may be a little overstated in that that the bad actor doesn't know that the call was blocked in the network, so they may retry several times to make that same call because it didn't go through. From a legal services perspective, again, the numbers, in the 30% range. Insurance, 10%, healthcare, 5 to 10%. The technology company is a little bit different. It's a little bit lower, but they also have the ability to block calls that they know weren't routed by them. So these numbers are actually kind of staggering and quite surprising that the amount of spoofing that's occurring is actually pretty great. And parts of what we'd like to do with the next steps is we've reached out to, again, Josh at ITG, to help understand who's signing these calls so that we can help the company then identify where the bad traffic's coming from and get that shut down. So that's one of the reasons on how businesses are fighting back. Again, the need to protect is real. Without the protection, the cost will continue to rise for both enterprises and consumers. And so we believe that these anti-spoofing and branded calling can be positioned positively as kind of an insurance policy. It just needs to be positioned that it's an evolving threat that needs to be stopped once all points of origination are aggregated. So, again, anti-spoofing works with, like I said before, branded calling to immediately, block unverified calls from registered numbers that they have. Or you could provide advice of risk. We're really looking to deliver a zero trust policy here of never trust, but always verify. And again, to enable end-to-end secure communication, verify every single call. If the enterprise will, let us know that they're about ready to make a call, and when we see that call come into the carrier's network, then we know whether it was legitimately from the enterprise. If so, then we'll provide the proper branding. If not, then we'll again provide call treatment based on what the enterprise policy is, and we continue to monitor that with increased visibility. Again, we want to make sure that we're not blocking legitimate calls. Something may have happened with the connection between the private connection between TNS and others with their with their connection. And so again, we think that there's an opportunity to significantly eliminate the vulnerability to sophisticated voice fraud. Again, bad actors are going to, kind of be like a whack-a-mole. They're going to know where they can, where they're going to, where the holes are, within the, the analytics technology and, within the, the PSTN framework. So again, they're going to either move down to the next level of tier, across the financial institutions. We've seen, a great number, try to use, TDM to kind of hide where the, where those calls are coming in from a stir shaken perspective. We're seeing, SIM boxes as well, being, used to, generate fraudulent calls as well. So again, this is all real. And so, bad actors are really smart. I'm sure they have their own data science teams just like we do. And unfortunately, it's just a race against time to, try to stay ahead of what tactics they're using and making sure that we have the right technology in place to, again, restore trust in voice calling, because there are certain verticals that really require high touch communications, like healthcare, like financial, and technology, et cetera. So that's what I have. Again, Sarah, let's open this up for Q&A. You can either ask questions in the chat, and I'll look at the chat to see what questions are there. But we'll start from there. So if you have questions, don't be afraid to put them in the chat, or don't be afraid to ask a question. Hopefully this was useful. Again, a lot of data, but again, a really big problem that we're trying to address within the industry. So again, thanks for listening to me. If you were waiting for Maury to give his yarn, spin his yarn, again, I apologize that he wasn't able to make it, and unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, you had to listen to me the entire time. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
All right.